Kip, what's going on, man? Glad to be joining you for another Ask Me Anything.
Yeah.
You ready to do this?
Facebook.
Yeah, we're live on
What the
Facebook.
hell?
As far as I know. As far as I know. Well, I was gonna start sharing a story with you, but you said no. Let's share this where everybody can hear it.
Yeah, it had quality, just good entertainment.
Yeah, I may or may not have been training jiu-jitsu last night, and I was rolling with well, I won't say who it is just in case they feel bad about this, but I was rolling with a training partner, and I was doing pretty good. I felt pretty good. I caught him in a submission. I say caught because I really just did catch it. Like, it wasn't like it was legit, but I just caught him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You never know if it's a little bit of luck or
right. I'm not taking credit for it as much. It was the move that you taught me with the lapel over the neck, grab from underneath, and I couldn't quite tighten it down. But I swung my leg up over because I was going to start. It wasn't working, so I swung my leg over and thought, well, maybe I can get an arm bar in here. And as soon as I put my leg over it, like tightened everything up.
Yeah.
And I stayed with it and caught him.
Nice.
And
so it
then
ended up with the choke, almost like a hanging.
Yeah.
As you're putting your hips into him. Okay.
Right. It felt really good. And then it was all over from there. It was all downhill from there.
So switch, like his little dial switch of aggression went from
no, I mean, he wasn't
like
being a
8.
jerk, but like it was on. So I think I honestly I can't really remember, but I think I was either in his guard. I'm pretty sure I was in his guard, and he caught me in a bread cutter. And I remember thinking, oh, this feels pretty tight, but like I'm okay. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up and he's shaking my legs. He's like, hey, Ryan, wake up. And he's shaking my legs. And I'm like, holy cow, what happened? And he's like, you passed out. And I was like, because I was dreaming. I was in La La Land. Like, I woke up and I was like, oh, I had a night's rest. Like, I just woke up, had some weird dreams, and here I am. How did I get to jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, you were on the island. The island.
Yeah, the island, is that what it is? Yeah. So I'm like, what happened, man? He's like, I don't know. He's like, you were good, and then all of a sudden you just went
started gurgling.
Yeah, and went limp. And I was waiting for you to tap because I knew I had you. Or he said I was waiting for you to tap because I knew I had you. And all of a sudden you started gurgling and just went limp. And then just like flopped on the floor, and that's when I started kind of trying to wake you up. You were only out for like a second, Yeah. Anyways, so people say, well, why didn't you tap earlier? I thought I was good, actually. Like, I knew it was tight, but I was like, I'm fine. Anyways, he had made an adjustment. Like, he got me, and I felt good, and then he made an adjustment and just cinched everything down. Yeah, and I was out. So, so that was in. And then it took me a minute to like come to, and then Pete's like, hey, man, you want to roll again? Because I'd rolled with him earlier in the night. And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Let me just, I just need a few seconds here so I can wake back up. So anyways, it may or may not have been good training last night.
Yeah.
That's a hypothetical. I can't confirm whether that's a true story or just something I made up.
Maybe fictional. Yeah.
That's right.
Be a fictional
that's
story.
Right.
That's funny. The only time I've almost fallen asleep, it was kind of like the window was closing and I was kind of floating, and it wasn't even during training. It was over like an instruction. So I think I was tired. Probably my sugar levels were lower or something, and we were just going over chokes. That's it. Like just going over chokes, and all of a sudden I'm like falling asleep.
Oh boy.
So yeah, if it's a good choke, it's a good choke. I don't think it takes much.
It was a good choke. And I was thinking about it. The interesting thing about like a choke, because you have your blood chokes, right? And they don't hurt at all. No. I wasn't hurting. I just remember thinking, oh, this is like tight, but like I'm okay. Like maybe he'll let go. That was my thought. Like maybe he'll let go because it's not working, and then boop, out.
Yeah, just drift into a dream slowly.
Yep. Yeah. Anyways, so there's your entertainment for the day, fellas. Think about that.
Yeah.
It was a good time. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hypothetically
speaking, in a fictional universe,
it would have been a blast.
It would have been a good, it was a dream. This was all made up. This was a made up story. All right, man. Let's get to the questions. We got some questions. We're live on Facebook. I think these questions come from the Iron Council. By the way, if you guys are interested in our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council, then check it out. Orderaman.com/Iron Council. We're not creative around here, but you can find us.
Yeah, it's like slash something. Regarding Facebook,
actually, it's backslash.
Facebook
I think.
No, it's a // for sure. Positive.
We need to put a poll out there.
This is my realm of expertise. I have no desire to know anyone's opinion about this.
No, I want to know.
Wrong.
I want to know is the slash that you would use, so it's higher in the top right, lower in the bottom left, right? That's what we're talking about. Is that a backslash or a forward slash?
No, a / is leaning to the right.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah. So I think that's a backslash.
It is not. I promise.
Because it's back. It's leaning back.
No.
All right. Let's get to this. Let's get to some real stuff here.
If you guys want to join us in the future, maybe, we don't know, but join us on Facebook, facebook.com/group/ordervan. That's where we're going live. I just wanted to bring that up since we said we were live.
Right. Well. Yep. Cool, man.
All right. First question. Bill Teo, if you could learn one skill in the next 48 hours, what would it be and why? Disclaimer, you have 1,000 or less to spend on time and material. 48 hours.
48 hours of learning a skill with $1,000. You know, something I've actually been thinking a lot about because I'm doing a little bit of work with Warrior Poet Society. A lot of you guys are familiar with them.
Yeah.
And we've got some cool announcements coming out very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Anyways, I would really like to know tactical shooting very well. I think that would be a very cool skill. I think it'd be very applicable. I think it would be enjoyable. I've done a little rifle work, primarily because I was in the military, but like pistol work is something that I could see as being
switching between or whatever that's called.
Yeah, but just being able to draw quicker, being able to exchange and magazines, you know, just that sort of thing. I think that would be a very cool skill to have. And practical, you know, hopefully you would never have to use that, but it would be a good skill to have. And hopefully, like I said, never have to use it. But if you have it and need it, then it's there and present. So I actually think that would be really valuable. In fact, I've talked to them about it and we're going to do some stuff there. Cool. Outside of that, like when I lean to very applicable skills, like what would I want to know and what would I want to be a master at? Anything communication. So if it's presenting, if it's building a network, if it's adding value to other people, like any way that I can build and expand my influence, credibility, and network, that's always been really, really valuable for me. So I take a lot of courses and programs and trainings. I study what I see as other good presenters are doing. I emulate what they do personally and try to improve it for myself. I think like if there's one skill that you could learn, I like just one, it would be the ability to communicate effectively. I just think that is one of the most valuable skills because it impacts everything else, right? It impacts your ability to lead as a father. It impacts your ability to sell. It impacts your ability to ask for a promotion or ask for a date or ask for a hand in marriage. Every facet of life can be improved through your ability to communicate and express ideas effectively. So that's another skill set that I think is something every man should consider.
Cool. There you go, Bill. Primate Ball, what thought process do you use to decide as to whether one should reinvent the wheel versus using an already proven strategy when making key life decisions? I personally like to do things myself, even if it leads to some dead ends and helps me feel independent in a way.
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything wrong with experimenting and reinventing the wheel to a degree to see what works, to have some creative muscles and juices flowing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Now, when it comes to the actual situation, especially if you're crunched for time or resources like money, then maybe you ought to do what's worked and ensure that you create some sort of success. There's a principle. It's actually first principles is the idea. And I had a former rocket scientist on the podcast about 4 weeks ago. His name is Ozan Varol. And he worked for NASA. He worked on the Mars rover missions. And he was talking a lot on that podcast about Elon Musk. And he talks about it in his book, Think Like a Rocket Scientist. And he calls these first principles. And first principles are when you strip everything else away, like these are the principles of rocket propulsion, for example. But when Elon Musk started looking at how to send a mission to Mars, you know, he looked at the first principles, the things that are principles that you have to use. But there's other things like reusable rocket boosters, for example. That wasn't a first principle. He just looked at it from a different angle. Rocket propulsion is rocket propulsion, but can we reuse this? He started using different material that was less expensive, that was lighter and more durable. Yeah. And this, if I remember correctly, was entirely unheard of in the space exploration space. But he looked at it from that perspective. So he relied on first principles, foundational principles, and then started messing with the other variables that weren't first principles, and then created this entirely new thing. They talk a lot about it too in the book Blue Ocean Strategy, and they talk about taking ideas from one market sector and then adding another market sector. The one that really stands out for me is Cirque du Soleil and their shows. They took elements of the circus and then they implemented it and combined it with elements of theater, and they created this entirely new blue ocean, an uncontested market space, because they took ideas from different places. And this is actually the advantage that men have when they come into a space or a sector that they're not entirely familiar with. Like, for example, if I came into the IT, the networking, the computer, the consulting business like you're doing, Kip, not that I would be an expert, of course, because you're the expert, but I would potentially bring something to the table that none of you guys have ever even remotely considered before, because it isn't in your purview. It isn't in your wheelhouse. And same thing with other people coming into my space. So we ought to be very aware that just because they may not be an expert doesn't mean they don't have some interesting ideas. I think about this in the context of fighters, like MMA fighters, for example. You see certain guys come in who are very unorthodox, like Conor McGregor, really unorthodox, right? You think about Tony Ferguson, although did you see that match, by the way, with Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje? Oh my goodness.
Tough fight, man.
That was a clinic by Gaethje. That was amazing. Anyways, but Tony Ferguson, props to him. You know, I've never seen somebody take abuse like that. That was crazy.
Yeah, he might be hurt.
At the last round where he was like, his brain wasn't firing right. Like he was shaking it off, and like he was not there. Anyways, but you take a guy like Tony Ferguson, the reason he's been so hard to deal with is because he's unorthodox.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what he's going to do. He does weird things. He moves weird. He's like, and so when you see it for the first time, you think it's very strange. But also, he's a very good, like he knows how to fight too. It's not like just some random wild man who just goes in there and swinging all over the place. Yeah, like he's obvious. Yeah. Exactly. He's got a strategy. He's obviously conditioned very well. He's if I understand correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you know, but he's probably a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. He knows how to strike. He knows how to throw a punch. He obviously knows how to take a punch. Like he knows these things, first principles. And then once he has the first principles down, he's able to develop his game above and beyond that because he has those basics mastered, and then it can take other elements and create an entirely new thing and push the sport forward in a place that, you know, other people just aren't able to do. Yeah. Muhammad Ali, very much the same way, that showboat, that showman mentality, getting in people's heads, right? That wasn't present before him really. So is he a good boxer? Hell yeah, he's a good boxer. And then he brought a new element into it to make something better than we've ever seen before. So I don't think it's about reinventing the wheel. It's about taking first principles, getting so good at the fundamentals. Like my friend Sean Whalen was talking about this the other day. He had posted a video, and he said he went to a baseball game. And if you watch these Major League Baseball players, they are doing the same thing that my 3- and 4-year-olds are doing off of a tee. They're hitting off a tee. They're taking soft toss. They got the fungo bat out, and they're taking drills and grounders. They're doing the same thing because they've got so good at the basics. And getting good at the basics is what allows you to be creative with other avenues. But if you're not good at the basics, you can't really be creative in a meaningful way. Anyways, I'm beating a dead horse here, but I think you get it.
Well, and I think something that crossed my mind while you're sharing, Ryan, is is we make a lot of assumptions sometimes, right? Like I think it's valuable to look at a scenario and just look at anything that's assumed and question it. You're like, okay,
Right.
well, if you use, Elon Musk as an example, it's like, it was an assumption that, hey, guess what? We waste the rocket. Well, why? Like, don't go with that assumption. Like, question the assumption. Why do we have to do that? Right. And I think in those moments is where we find some creativity and a lot of efficiencies, because I from an IT perspective, all the time, you look at a business process and we evaluate a flow of efficiency in a business, and it's like, well, why do we do that? Right. Let's question it. Well, because when I started, the person before me used to do, copies of that file and they put it in this spot. Okay, well, let's not just assume that that's still valuable. So let's now deep dive into it. And now we find out that like there's this high inefficiency in a business process, because why? That's why I was trained 10 years ago, and I've done that this whole time, and no one's even been looking at that data the entire time. Right. So we just have these assumptions that we just make. And to your point on the MMA side is like, I think we see that in jiu-jitsu too, where you get guys that, I want to be careful on saying this, but they're kind of one trick ponies, right? They are amazing in the leg lock game, for instance, but they've honed into that. They've critiqued it. They've made it their specialty. And by doing so, they've been able to rock the system. And then what happens is people adjust to it.
Right. They figure it out.
Okay, we need to adjust. But those guys, those innovators in that early stage, when they push the envelope and before people have a chance to adjust and to that style, they have this opening of huge success until people catch up. You can see it with Royce Gracie in the early days of the UFC. It's like no one could stop the guy. Why? Because no one knew what the hell he was doing. Like, it was so foreign. And now it's like, okay, you want to be an MMA fighter, whether you do jiu-jitsu or not, you have to be able to defend it. You have to be able to stop it. And then it increases the bar of what's required to be an MMA fighter now, right? And then you'll see guys that adjust to styles of Conor McGregor, Tony Ferguson, to adjust then. And then all of a sudden, it's like someone else going to come up with some other style that people are going to have to contend with, adjust, and then we all improve. Right. So.
This is why innovation is so important. And I fall into this trap quite often. I wish that I didn't, but I think we all do, is we begin to rest on our laurels, right? So we do one thing and then we have success at that endeavor and we think, oh, okay, well, it got me to this point. So
Solid.
I just got to keep doing this, or I got to do it harder, or I got to do it longer or more, and it will produce the same results. No, it won't, because people are adjusting, people are learning, people are evolving. Your competitors are coming up behind you. They're adjusting, and you need to constantly be innovating and creating new ways. This is why we're doing, for example, this live. Now, that might seem like a small innovation. It doesn't even sound like an innovation. It's just an evolution, right? It's like, oh, should we do this live? A pivot. Same thing. And maybe not even a pivot. It's just like, oh, here's one more resource that we can make this available. Same thing with YouTube. It's like, we already had the podcast available, and guys are like, oh, man, how do you do so much? The reason we can do as much as we do right now is because we've learned this side, and we've become very proficient at podcasting, for example, which now gives us a leverage to be able to explore and pursue different avenues that might get us a larger reach, that might impact more men. But you don't get to shortchange the system. The only way you shortchange it, in a way, is by hiring mentors and coaches who will walk you through some of the pitfalls that you would otherwise step into. And I have. I brought on coaches and mentors who have said, I don't know, like, I tried that and it didn't work. And sometimes my coaches have said, I don't know, like, maybe you should just try it and see. And sometimes you just take a rip and you might make contact and you might strike out, but you learn. So continue to evolve, continue to innovate. Don't rest on what's worked in the past. Take the first principles. Hey, here's the foundational principles. I'm going to continue to use those, but I'm going to innovate and evolve to create new results for myself.
Yeah, love it, man. So I hopped on Facebook, right? So we have a couple, like Colorado, someone from India. That's kind of cool. Wisconsin,
Sweet.
Minnesota. Do you see the default stupid thumbnail that's being used on Facebook?
What is it? Hold on, now I got to see it.
Oh my goodness.
No, what is it? I guess I can't see it or something here.
It's me making a really stupid face, and that's what's the default thumbnail.
You smiling around. like a goon there?
Like
we're both
crazy.
Smiling. We're both smiling.
Oh, well. All right. Bill Sharp. If you go back in time, one of these questions, but it's actually kind of funny. If you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old version of yourself, what would it be and why jiu-jitsu?
Wait, why jiu-jitsu is separate from that question, right?
I'm assuming what he's saying is, of course, the answer is jiu-jitsu and why.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But maybe not. Maybe Bill meant two different questions there.
I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes my wife laughs at me because I take things so no. Oh. I just take things so literally that sometimes she says I miss a lot of jokes because I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's a joke. I'm like, yeah, I don't get it. She's like, because it's a joke, you're trying to like interpret what it means. Like just lighten up. So my wife gives me a hard time about that. So maybe he's making a joke. And it, by the way, if I don't get your joke, guys, it has nothing to do with your ability to tell jokes and everything with my ability to take things so seriously and literally at any given point that it might just fly completely over my head. So if you're making a joke, good one. If not, let me answer it here.
Don't take it personal. Yeah.
That's right. All right. So what would I tell my 18-year-old self? Honestly, I would just tell him to take more risks, take more chances, like say yes to a few more things. Don't be like so driven towards one path, like explore a lot of different things, take a bunch of different opportunities, go on trips, have experiences. If something sounds even remotely interesting, take advantage of it, say yes to it. I mean, when you're young at 18, like that's a perfect time to be exploring. You have low responsibility. You don't have a wife. You don't have kids. You really don't have a career. You might have a job that can be on the back burner for a minute. Like just go and explore, find out as much about the world as you possibly can, and train jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Why jiu-jitsu? I don't know. People ask that all the time. It's like, why not this? It very easily could have been that.
Because it's superior is why. Next question.
I mean, no, I would say that now because maybe objectively you could make the case for that, right? Objectively, I think you could make the case for that.
A lot of people have, at least. Let's say that.
Yeah. So I think there's a case to be made that objectively it is a superior martial art, okay, to others. That said, we're biased.
Backlash here. Yeah.
Right? We're biased. Like, so we don't know. We can't objectively answer that question. So why jiu-jitsu? Because that's what my friends did.
Yeah. What's be afraid. Yeah.
That's it.
It's what got introduced to me. Yeah.
That's it. If all my friends did Krav or karate or boxing or wrestling or pick, then I probably would have done one of those. And I would have been saying the same, well, in jiu-jitsu, it's not good because blah, 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 blah. And that's why boxing is better. Whatever, right? I would have been making the same subjective, objective case that everybody else makes about their preferred martial art. I think, again, objectively, you could make the case that jiu-jitsu is superior in a lot of ways. Unless you need to punch somebody, right? And then you don't, or take a punch, right? And then you don't really know how to do that. So
yeah.
That's why. If we're being truthful, it's because that's what you were doing. That's what Matthew Arrington was doing. That's what Pete Roberts does. Those are the guys I spend time with and admire and respect. And so naturally, that's what I do. This is why it's so important to consider who you're spending time with. Because if all you guys were losers and stoners and you're getting drunk and doing all the things that you wanted to do and you didn't have discipline and I was hanging out around you, it's very likely that I would actually be doing much of that as well. So you got to be conscious about who you're spending time with.
Yeah, drinking beer is my martial art.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, party.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that.
All right. Andrew Alphabet, what do you do if your boss has checked out? How do you step up? Do you say anything? Can you call them out?
Hold on a second.
Checked out boss.
Hold on a second.
Uh-oh. What?
Come on, man. You could say that guy's name. He even gave you a pronunciation of it.
Well, I copied and pasted in from.
Oh, okay. Here it is. Impagliazzo. Impagliazzo.
Impagliazzo. Andrew.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. What's the question?
Hey, actually, why don't you go ahead and read the question and then I'll just reply.
I'm not falling for it, man. He's asking about a boss that's checked out.
Yeah, boss is checked out. How do I step up? Do I say anything? Do I call them out?
I don't think you call him out because that's not going to go well, right?
Checked
I
out.
think,
Do we define what's checked out? Like, is that like you have a boss that's just not engaged at work? Like he's just kind of like doesn't give a crap about anything anymore? Is that kind of what checked out is, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe somebody who's just going through the motions. His heart isn't in it. His mind isn't in it. Maybe he has some distractions. Maybe his wife's going through an issue, or he's dealing with something with his kid. I don't know. You don't know. Well, maybe you do know. But I don't know. You don't know, Kip. But maybe Andrew knows. I don't think you call him out because, like I said, like how is that? How do you envision that going in your mind? Like that actually sounds like a recipe for disaster. Yeah. Now, how do you step up? I think you just look for opportunities, right? The opportunities are going to present themselves, and you just do it and make the boss look good. Yeah. I'm not saying Brown knows him. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying
don't undermine him. Yeah.
Don't undermine him. No, just step up to the plate. If there's an opportunity, if there's something that needs to be addressed, if it maybe even talk with the boss and say, hey boss, like we've got this one initiative and it seems like nobody's really been on it. And I think it could be really important because of X, Y, and Z. And I would like to head this up because of, and then list off the benefits of doing it and why you'd be the best man for the job and then get his sign off on it. Can I go do this? That boss actually is probably going to appreciate that, especially if he's checked out. Because if you, Kip, came to me and said that and I was tuned out, I'd be like, yeah, because I know, right? I would know that thing needs to be done. And if you came to me and said, hey, I'm going to do it, again, not with the intent to you got to be careful because if you're doing it to like showboat or sidestep him and he interprets it that way, then he's going to shut it down. So interpret it as, hey, I'm trying to help you, or excuse me, deliver it as I'm trying to help you. As I'm trying to help the team, I want to prop this company up or the organization or our specific department up, and I think you'll have a lot of success with that. But, here's the other thing. If he's checked out, he might have one foot out the door. And if he has one foot out of the door, like maybe he's entertaining another job offer. Yeah. If he's got one foot out the door, there's an opportunity right there. And this is a really good opportunity for you to potentially step into that position if you're the guy who has stepped up. You don't know. Maybe he's even talking with the owner of the organization, for example, and saying, hey, I'm leaving in 6 weeks or 4 weeks. You don't know what's happening. And maybe he's looking for somebody to replace himself. And all of a sudden, if he recognizes Andrew Yu as the guy who's been stepping up and leading and recognizing projects and tasks and things that need to be done, and he sees you doing it and being a team player and lifting the organization up, you're going to be the selection. So I think there's some very serious opportunities here. Now, if you have a guy who's been around for 10 years and this is constantly how he is, then this is what I was saying earlier. Be a great communicator and also be a great networker because there might be some other opportunities in the wide world that you can take advantage of, and maybe you found yourself in a position that just doesn't have any upward mobility. But I would say try everything you can first. Give this boss here's another thing I'd say. If this is out of character for him, give him a benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, this could be just a season for him or something's going on.
Yeah, so if it's out of character, I'd be like, what's the root here, And I'd give my boss the benefit of the doubt. If this is the way it is, and it's been this way for the last decade, at this point, it's probably more on you than him because, what are you expecting to change over a 10-year period if you haven't changed anything? So do what you can, look for opportunities elsewhere, become a great networker, and position yourself for opportunities that may come up down the road.
Cool. David Bennett, I finished reading The Way of Men, and now I'm reading Becoming a Barbarian. I would like to hear your thoughts on Donovan's statement, moral universalism is a philosophy for men who have surrendered.
Say the quote again. Moral universalism.
Moral is a philosophy for men who have surrendered.
I assume this is a great question. We have Jack's actually coming to do a special visit in the Iron Council, so we should ask him about this. But I assume what Jack is referring to when he talks about moral universalism is talking about worrying about the whole, right? Everybody, right? And thinking that the whole is greater than the individual. And I think that's a trap. Like that's socialism. That's the root of socialist ideas, right? That the group is significantly more important than the individual, and the group's rights supersede individual rights. And I think that's where we run into issues. Group rights don't supersede individual rights. Individual rights supersede group rights. Now, there might be group identity. There might be group philosophy and foundational principles. You take America, for example. Not all, but the overwhelming majority of us believe in freedom, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? And that's at our foundational level. But we still, even though it's threatened at this point, we still honor the individual's rights. And it's unfortunate that we're allowing the group's rights as a whole to overtake the individual's rights. Like I even think about this when it comes to freedom of speech, for example, which seems like it's threatened at every turn. If we make it so that, or we try to create systems so that people don't have hurt feelings, then we're putting the group above the individual. And that's a recipe for disaster. So now the group's interests as a whole take priority over what an individual thinks. So if, for example, hate speech, and I talked about this on the podcast with Dave Rubin yesterday, he actually believes in protected hate speech, because if you can't,
the dampering of it, like it's not, he believes it shouldn't be allowed.
Right. He believes that hate, quote unquote, hate speech should be protected speech. Because if you can't protect and defend things you don't agree with, then you have no basis to protect and defend things that you do agree with. It either applies broadly or not at all. So I don't agree with everything that everybody says. Right? I've had guests on my podcast where I'm like, yeah, I don't really agree with that, but I respect your right to think that. I respect your right to feel that way. And, I've had people say things that are insulting to me, but I would never say that individual can't talk or speak or share his mind because I happen to be offended by what the individual is saying. This is where we get into this universal idea that the group, this larger context, is more important than any one individual. And it's just not true. And it leads to the quote that he has suggested here. What was the last part of that quote that he said?
Philosophy for men who have surrendered. Yeah,
that's correct. If we're talking about it from this standpoint,
to the group, right?
Right, yeah. To the authority, right? So yeah. Yes, the group is more important than me as an individual. Now, I actually say things like, especially in the Iron Council, mission first, right? So some people might interpret that as, well, group first, so no one individual is going to mess with the mission. No, I'm actually protecting the individuals of the group. So here's our mission and here's our purpose, right? To bridge the gap between what men know and what they're actually doing, and then give them a framework for growing and accountability. That's what we're doing in the Iron Council. That's the mission of the Iron Council. And the mission comes first. So if anybody comes in and is counter to that mission, they don't get to just stick around because the individual is important. Because I also have a responsibility to protect the rights of the other individuals who are on board with that mission and that purpose. Yeah. So we need to remember that the individual rights always come first. And then there's collective thoughts and ideas and principles that we adhere to. But the individual is the most important unit in society, followed closely by the family.
Yeah, and the group is just a collection of those individual rights.
Correct.
And as the individuals change or evolve, which, as I'd probably say is occurring in the U.S., we start seeing a shift in the group and in regards to what the group, and sometimes that's negative, unfortunately. But that's what's also so powerful. And I don't know why, but when I hear you express this, there's a tendency of agency that comes into this, and ownership of oneself. There's a tendency of, when the group comes first, I'm a victim to the group, and I'm not owning, or I'm not like thriving forward on my individual self in regards to what's important and ultimately doing what's best. You know what I mean? For myself and for my family, I'm a victim of the overall group or the, universalism.
Yeah. I mean, one example I have is people talk about like white privilege. Like that, these are the kind of messages that I get. It's like, oh, you're speaking like someone with white privilege. Well, if you mean, am I white? I would agree with that. If you mean that there's situations that I have been the fortunate recipient and beneficiary of that were largely outside of my control, I would also agree with that. But what would you have me do? Like not take advantage of the opportunities that I'm presented with?
Yeah.
Or somehow make quote unquote amends with somebody that I had nothing to do with their situation. Oh, and by the way, there's also things that I've overcome in my life that other people haven't had to deal with. And I'm not throwing a pity party about that. I'm just saying we all deal with things. Some harder than others, some just different than others. So we've all had to overcome things. There's challenge in all of it. But if we begin to believe that a group of people has made us the subjects, or then of course we're going to blame it on them and discard any personal accountability or responsibility we have for our situation. Now, some of those things may have happened. Slavery, for example. I'm not saying that didn't exist. Of course it existed. And it's tragic, and it is a scar in our history. But it's there, and it no longer exists. Is there racism? Sure there is. And that's a challenge that some people will have to overcome. We're going to fight to ensure that doesn't happen. And I believe we live in the least racist country and society in the history of the world ever. But that doesn't mean we don't have room to go. We do. But there's still opportunity, right? There's still things, and you're not being hindered by the group. So it's I happen to agree with this quote as far as I am interpreting it and defining it.
Yeah, it'll be great to have Donovan on, and
yeah, for sure.
Should purposely bring this up. I liked it.
Yeah.
All right, John Jenkinson, what is your vision for the Iron Council in the next 3 years?
Well, again, like I've talked to you guys at length, I really plan in quarterly segments, but the vision for the Iron Council is I imagine capping it off here in the not too distant future. Again, the vision hasn't changed. And I just said it a couple minutes ago. The vision is to bridge the gap between what men know they should be doing and what they're actually doing. That's the greatest problem men face, because most men know what they should be doing. You want to lose weight? You exercise, you move a little bit more, you live a healthier lifestyle, reduce unnecessary stress, get the proper level of sleep. This isn't new information, right? You want to get promoted or start a business, learn how to add more value, learn to listen to your customer or your employer and continue to add value over and over and over again, and you will inevitably produce the results. You want to improve your bank account? Well, you need to learn to make, again, yourself more valuable so your time is worth more money, or you're leveraging your time by hiring other people to do your work, right? So you're now a business owner. And then invest wisely, spend less money on things you don't need. That's how you build wealth. Like, these aren't new concepts. So the vision has always been, how do we take a guy who's not experiencing the results that he wants in his life and help him bridge the gap between what he already knows he should be doing and then giving him the foundation, the framework, the roadmap, and the added level of accountability and camaraderie with other men
to get there,
to help him go from point A to point B. That vision has never changed. We started the Iron Council in November of 2015. So almost, coming 4.5 years now, roughly. It's never changed. And in 3 years, barring some unforeseen or unknown event or change of circumstances, it will continue to be the vision, bridging the gap between what we know and what we do. The objectives change, right? Right now, for example, we're in the midst of achievement and advancement initiatives in the Iron Council. Right, we're bringing on guests. We're having other people within the Iron Council work in their specialties and working on assignments and videos. So there's always new objectives and strategies that we have, but the vision has always stayed the same. and again, barring some unknown circumstances, will always be the same. It's going to be the same in 3 years. I don't know what the objectives are. I don't know what the tactics are going to look like, but I know that that's going to be the vision.
Okay. All right, Tyson Junkers, a good friend of mine has been working at the same company for a while now, but is looking for something new. He's just not sure what he wants to do. What advice would you give someone like that who's unsure where to start or what direction to go?
It sounds like Tyson's friend is looking for finality. Right? So like, okay, I'm looking for something new and this has to be it.
Like,
this has to be the
thing. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't work like that. Life does not work linear like that. I mean, it'd be awesome if you could say, okay, well, I'm meant to do this and I'm going to do this. And I think we get this idea from the silver screen, right? Like we see this kid who always wants to be a race car driver or a fighter pilot or a baseball player or whatever, right? And then he goes through some difficult circumstances and he has a mentor come into his life and he overcomes some personal challenges and some internal struggles. And then 2 hours later, he has the thing that he wants. And it's like this linear progression. So we buy into the idea that it's supposed to be linear. Yeah. It's not. It's all over the place, right? So for me, I've done pizza delivery, I've done landscaping, I've done electrical, I served in the military, I did some heating and air stuff. Then I started in a financial planning practice. I worked with 3 different firms, 2 of which were structured a little bit differently. Then I started my own, and then I started a podcast for the financial planning practice. And then I stopped doing it for the financial planning practice, and then switched to Order of Man, which was just a podcast. And then it goes on and on and on, right? So, and in 3 years, it could be something completely different. I don't know. So instead of looking for the finality of something, just start exploring something. So if something sounds even remotely interesting, then I would say take a step in whatever the direction that is. That's all you owe yourself. You don't owe yourself to go down that path. You don't owe yourself the finality of whatever that may be. All that you owe to yourself is, that thing kind of sounds interesting. What would it look like if I just took one step towards that thing? And that first step might just be purchase a course on whatever that subject is, or go to a class, or have a conversation with somebody you know is in that business or that industry. It's just, life is a series of just steps. That's all it is. It's not leaps, it's steps. So what Tyson, I would tell your friend is, I would ask him, what sounds interesting? And I would encourage him to do this exercise. Write down as many things as possible. Like 100 things. Like you got to write down 100 things that sound interesting to you. And the reason I tell you to do 100 is because if I told you to do 3, you would start disqualifying things. Naturally, you'd be like, well, I'd like to, I'd like to trade baseball cards or whatever. Whatever your thing is, you're like, yeah, but this, and you'd come up with all these reasons why you shouldn't do that. But if I tell you to come up with a list of 100, you're going to start qualifying things. Because probably you can't think of 100 right offhand. You might be able to think of 5, but not 100. Now you're going to be like really scrambling. Okay, well, I could do this and maybe this and this. So you're qualifying instead of disqualifying. We'll get to the disqualifying later. But just start writing those things down. And then what you're going to notice is you're probably going to notice some trends within those list of 100 things. And if there's some trends, some similar ideas, concepts, trades, industry sectors, that's where you start narrowing it down and thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm on to something right here. Maybe being with people really, really appeals to me, or being artistic or creative really appeals to me. And then you start taking the one little step followed by another one. And you might realize, I like this. I'm going to keep going down this rabbit hole. Or you might say, not really interested. And then you just back up and you take another step in another direction. This is how it works, not like a 2-hour movie where everything just works out perfectly the way it's supposed to.
If you don't mind me clarifying, more of a question, Ryan, is you go through this process and you find something. I'm assuming you would suggest that that's not even final. That's temporary. That's an experience for a period of time. And then that may even pivot, right? It's really interesting how we I can't remember the term that you used, but we finalize everything. We even finalize people. Like, you know, you and I could have an argument today about a particular subject, and I could take your stance and then go, okay, that's Ryan, period. Like that there's no growth, that's not going to maybe evolve or change for you tomorrow, right? Like we do it to almost everything, to ourselves. We think that this is the thing, or when a person acts a certain way, that they're finalized in that way of being, versus just experience and evolution and pivoting and just it's just like an ongoing experience of change.
Yeah, because what do we say when a person changes their thought process or job or what we call them flaky. We say they're wishy-washy, or they flip-flop. Yeah. And maybe, but maybe they're just evolving. If I don't say different
things, you should. Yeah.
Right. If I don't, people will say, Ryan, you've changed. Yes, I have changed. Thank you for noticing. And if in 5 years my message hasn't evolved, I would question myself, but I would question somebody I follow. Like if they haven't evolved in their level of thinking, and be like this guy's just kind of resting on his laurels. He's not really growing. He's not expanding. He's not getting better or improving himself. There's people that I follow that I think, man, this guy's unrecognizable from what he was 5 years ago. And I actually admire that. I respect that. I don't call him wishy-washy. Yeah. I say this is a guy who's evolved and grown. And look at this, behind me, for example. Like, I've got this Sorenex kettlebell, and I've got some woodworking tools there. I've got a baseball glove. I've got like some things where I've spoken. I've got Spartan races. I've got one of the animals that I hunted. Like I've got a lot of different things here. And I don't have it there. It's actually downstairs, but there's my guitar stand. Like I have a lot of different things behind me, and all of these things are things that I've tried and enjoyed to some degree, some more than others, right? Some were just like Spartan race. I haven't done a Spartan race for 2 years, maybe even 3. And will I do another one? Maybe, but like that was a time for me, right? Now it's different. Now I'm doing more strength training and jiu-jitsu, and that's a thing for me. And will I be doing that in 3 years? As far as I know, but maybe something else comes along and that I'm interested in, and I will explore that. I owe it to myself to explore it. People ask, Ryan, how'd you get into hunting? I had a buddy who said, hey man, I've got property down here. One of my friends wants us to help take a couple of deer that shouldn't be on his property. And that's it, right? One of the deer right there. And do you want to come down and hunt? And I said, I've never been hunting. He's like, I know, that's why I want you to go. Yeah. That's a very insightful thought on his part. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I don't know what bow to get. And he's like, here's what you need. And I just said yes, right? And it's taken me down a path that I've really enjoyed. So just take a step. Short answer, just take a step. If it sounds interesting, take a step. That's it.
Yeah, I like it. John Gilliland, when thinking of successful men, Andy Frisella, Teddy Roosevelt, Alexander the Great, and you, Ryan, how do these types of men lead? That's a good list to be with. How do these types of men lead themselves? We men need organizations such as the IC to provide a success structure. Hashtag slaying dragons, hashtag gamma.
Did he say, what was the last part of it? Do we need a structure? Is that what he said?
Well, it's kind of a statement, right? How do these type of men lead themselves? And then the statement really was, we men need organizations such as the IC to provide a success structure. Maybe really like, did Andy and Teddy and Alexander the Great have a structure like we do in the Iron Council? And if they didn't, like, how did they lead themselves when there is not maybe that structure in place? I don't mean to add meaning to John's question here, but I think that's what he's saying.
Yeah. Well, I do know that the successful men that I know, they can lead themselves. They're disciplined. And I'm gonna share one virtue I think kind of encapsulates what it means to have self-leadership. I'll explain that in a minute. But I also think, again, every successful individual that I personally know hires mentors, hires coaches, invests in courses and conferences and higher learning and education. Every single one I know.
Yeah, they're investing in themselves tremendously. Yeah.
And if they're not, like I've never met a successful individual who has not invested in a coach or a resource and courses, and probably all of it to the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So yes, we do need a track to run. It's always interesting when I hear men say, and they usually comment back and they're being like a little snippy about it. They're like, real men don't need men to teach them how to be men. Wrong. That's like the exact opposite of the truth. The truth is that we all need people to emulate. Myself, yourself included, all of us need people to emulate, people who are further down the track. And it isn't like this one mentor like Obi-Wan Kenobi who walks you through everything. It's like, sometimes I just need to learn how to like build more strength. So I don't hire a life coach. I hired Josiah Novak to help me with like the strength component, right? And then I want to get good at jiu-jitsu. So like I don't hire a life coach. I go in and train with people who know jiu-jitsu. I want to get good at the guitar. Like, what's a life coach going to tell me about the guitar? Or like a one all-knowing mentor. I just get an app on the App Store and I just work through it. So you compartmentalize those and find the people that you need and the resources you need to do it. So all the great people, they all have that in common. Now let me go back to the leadership thing or the self-leadership thing. There's one word and one virtue that it represents that encapsulates self-leadership. It's integrity. It's integrity. It's not discipline. It's integrity. Integrity means that you do what you know you should be doing. That's it. So if you know you need to wake up at 5 o'clock this morning to get all your things done, to work out, to plan your day, to get into the office, and that's what you want to do, and you don't do it, you're out of integrity. You're not necessarily out of discipline. You're out of integrity. Self-leadership is an integrity issue. If you were in integrity and you could effectively lead yourself, then you would be fully in integrity, meaning that if you think about the things that you should be doing and you recognize it as something you want to be doing, then you do it only because you committed to doing it. That is integrity. And that's what all of us need to work on. I don't have this mastered. Some days I sleep in. Some days I eat more chips and salsa than I should or that I'd like to. Some days, I'm not as committed to work or I don't put in the work that I need to when I'm here at the office. I'm trying to bridge that gap. I'm trying to be in integrity. So what men need is not self-leadership. Let's dig deeper. What you need is to be in integrity. Now, you can create all sorts of systems and processes and accountability and all of these other things, and you should. But at its foundational level is, are you a man of integrity or not? And it's as black and white as that.
I like that. All right, Joseph Keatinge. This may be a question for the martial arts channel, but I was wondering if you could speak on the difference between traditional jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It seems like people use the terms interchangeably and can never tell which they mean.
I can't speak on that. I would argue to say that 99.9% of what people practice currently is Brazilian jiu-jitsu, even if they say jiu-jitsu. Yeah. But maybe you can elaborate on that, Kip. I can't. I don't know enough.
Yeah. So the history is actually jiu-jitsu is a origin of judo from the judokan. So
there's a lot of throwing and stuff involved in both totally. Arts.
Well, yeah. And there's a major shift in judo actually as it became an Olympic sport where they purposely like changed the martial art to make it more quote unquote entertaining and removing a lot of the ground side. You'll see guys sometimes in jiu-jitsu or in judo tournaments, they'll do a throw and then they immediately like do an arm bar.
Arm bars are big. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the correlation between judo and, let's just say it this way, traditional judo is traditional jiu-jitsu. And then it evolved into jiu-jitsu. In fact, even in the early stages of the judokan, it wasn't even called judo, right? Like it was actually called jiu-jitsu. So
what do you mean judokan? I don't understand what you're saying.
So judokan is what jiu-jitsu is what judo originated out of jiu-jitsu. And it was actually like a schooling within Japan that formulated judo. But before that, it was jiu-jitsu. Like if I remember correctly, jiu-jitsu is like a general term. So, and it's a general term of like, I can't remember I'm going to slaughter it. So I can't remember, but it's a general term. It's not like a martial art. It's like it's like fighting, or, you know what I mean? Something real generic.
Mm.
And so,
and then all these little practices diverged from
exactly,
it. And including, so jiu-jitsu was brought to Brazil, and then the Gracies started to work with and revolutionize it. And then they brought it from Brazil to the States.
And then they call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but its origin is still Jiu-Jitsu, right?
Right. So, which is leverage, the ground game, using. Yeah, I get it. Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, like Kimura, right? Like that's named after a guy in Japan, right? Like that. Even Helio fought back in the day, right? It's like, Helio didn't come up with the Kimura, right? Like it's actually named after a Japanese dude that used it, right? So he evolved it a little bit, added technique to it, and what's great about it is that's what we do today. Like that's one of the most amazing things about jiu-jitsu is like, you know how much it's changed since I started? Like half of these things didn't even exist. Like literally, like they did not exist. And they continue to like evolve. And there's just new strategies and approaches. And then the sport of jiu-jitsu even like takes it a whole other step, in another direction, which some traditional like self-defense guys may say there's some negative, aspects to the sport of jiu-jitsu because, we may not be managing distance as much because we're not thinking about strikes and the traditional.
Yeah, but but what people need to understand about that is it's two different things. When I talk about, for example, when you talk about training jiu-jitsu, most of the time you're talking about sport jiu-jitsu. Most of the time. You're not by default talking. And you're not by default talking about self-defense. Now, I know a lot of jiu-jitsu studios do more of a self-defense type jiu-jitsu, which it's different, right? There's the art and the competition side of things. And competition, by the way, competitions have rules that we both agree to. But a street fight doesn't have rules. If I get into an altercation, I'm going to kick a dude in the nuts. And I'm going to poke him in the eyeballs, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure I keep myself safe. Now, I'm not going to do that in a competition because there's rules. But in a street fight, there's no rules in the street. Yeah. Like you survive, right? Yeah. So I actually get frustrated when people are like, in a real thing, it's not designed to do that. Now, is there some crossover? Of course. Knowing how to use your body, knowing how to leverage, of course, there's crossover that's going to help you be more effective in an actual fight. But if you want to train for a fight, you'll incorporate elements of jiu-jitsu, elements of striking, elements of distance management, elements of situational awareness, disengagement, distance management, things that you don't necessarily address. How to shoot a firearm. You wouldn't learn how to shoot a firearm if all you were doing is jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So it's not like you need to pick one or the other. Like jiu-jitsu is part of a self-defense strategy, not the self-defense strategy.
Totally. And what's great about it too is like, and you'll see guys adjust their game. Like I know guys that purposely manage distance when they're training, even in the gi with other guys that are maybe more competitive, because that's their style. Like they're like, I purposely, like when I train, I am thinking about strikes, like, because I want to evolve that aspect of my jiu-jitsu probably more than maybe the sports side, right? And I may not do like, I don't know, like X guard or certain types of guards that maybe in a fight I'd get, some ground and pound,
or stabbed or shot or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you'll see guys, but what's great about the sports side of jiu-jitsu is the game that we're playing is a chess game, and it gets more and more complicated when you remove the self-defense side of it, right? Like the self-defense side of it, I think, is very simplistic, right? You're managing distance, you're avoiding strikes, and it kind of stops there. But like you throw a gi on, it's like, okay, I can choke you with this corner, and I can do this, and then now all of a sudden, like the possibilities and the avenues and the variations start just going crazy off the hook, where maybe you wouldn't do like half of those if strikes were being involved. And so,
well, I saw, yeah, but I saw a. Actually, I would say it's more pure. It's more pure because there's rules and there's things you're trying to figure out. A street fight is just raw and anything goes. It's less pure. Anyways.
Yeah. But you don't get the complexity with the street fight, right? Like by sports jiu-jitsu, there's this huge heightened complexity of, baiting and technique.
Yeah.
and
Which I
strategy
think
that
is
comes into
good
play
because
that you
it
normally don't
highlights
see.
your technique. I saw this video, this was years ago. It was on a security camera, and a couple of guys got into an altercation, and one of them obviously knew jiu-jitsu, and he took the guy down, he armbarred him, and then the guy who was in the armbar grabbed his knife, right, because his arm's locked up, grabbed his knife and stabbed him like half a dozen times in the chest.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, like, look, it's easy to be an armchair quarterback, but like, I don't know if I'm going to be throwing an arm bar on a guy that I'm street fighting with. If I'm going to try to choke him out really quickly, or I'm going to try to like push him down or get some distance and like get out of there, grab my firearm, whatever I need to do. Like, I'm not going to be working on leg locks on a guy in a street fight. Like, I'm going to try to get around his back, choke the shit out of him, and then disengage as quickly as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And hopefully not even get to the point where I can choke him. Hopefully manage the distance. Like, hey, man, like, I don't even want this.
Yeah, totally. Well, and some of it's just, we don't think, I mean, sometimes it's, well, we talk about it all the time, right? You go to the level of your training.
You
right?
fight like
And
you train.
so,
Yes.
Yeah, and so if we don't create those situations where we think through this, then, you might think, oh man, I'm really great at arm bars. I'm going to arm bar. But like, what happens after you let him go? Like, he's not going to go, oh, you caught me, my bad,
tap,
like, we're
tap.
done. Yeah, no. Like,
Right.
He may even tap and you may let go, and then he's just going to get up and keep fighting. Like, you got to resolve the solution. And that's the beauty of chokes, right? Is they go to the island and all of a sudden they're just kind of.
Do they?
Chill.
Is that how that works? I don't know anything about that.
This magical island they go to.
It's a beautiful place. It's very blissful.
And they feel like more kind when they wake up. They're just like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
were we fighting? Sorry.
Yeah, they're all docile, and yeah, it's nice. All right, do we have any more questions, or how we doing?
We have like too many questions. You guys are throwing.
All right, let's take a couple more and then
All right.
wrap things up for today.
All right, Daniel Madison, how do men celebrate wins in a healthy way? It's interesting.
Yeah, I like this. I like it. You honor the work that you did. I would say that you honor the work more than the win. That's one thing I've thought about, even with
like
kids.
The experience.
What created the win? Honor what created the win. The win itself is like, it's out of your hands.
Byproduct. Yeah.
Right. Just, it happens because you did the work, and you lose because you didn't do the work, or you did it incorrectly. That's like when you strip everything else away. So I think a healthy way to approach and celebrate victories is not celebrate the victory, but celebrate the effort that went towards creating the victory. And why should you do that? Because you're honoring the thing that produced it. Therefore, you're more likely to continue to do the thing. Because look, what good does it do to celebrate winning the lottery? You just picked some random numbers. Like you didn't do anything.
Grow. Yeah.
Right. Like you didn't do. Look, would you be excited? Sure. Would you celebrate it? No, because like you didn't do anything. You spent a couple of bucks down at the gas station, picked up a lottery ticket, and it worked out. And it's cool. Like it's great. But you wouldn't celebrate that the same way that you would celebrate a promotion or getting married or having a child or starting the business or growing it X%. Yeah. So celebrate what you can. The other thing, just don't gloat in it. Right. One of my coaches, Matt Labram, I remember him saying vividly, because somebody on the team was celebrating, and I remember vividly, he would say, winning is enough. Winning is enough. You
don't need to do all this other stuff. Yeah.
You don't. The win is enough. Let the win speak for itself. You don't need to celebrate. You don't need to gloat. You don't need to bask in it. And then he also said this, act like you've done it before and act like you're going to do it again. I see these guys celebrate, and I'm like, what, have you never won before?
Yeah.
Like, have you never experienced this before, you loser? Like, are you never going to experience it again? So, take some pride in the fact that you completed what you wanted to complete. Think about what got you to that point, and then go to work.
Yeah.
Go back to work. What's next?
I have a perfect example of this is, and this is a rarity because it doesn't happen very often, but getting my teenage boys put in a full solid day of hard work. And I remember once Kiabe, we got done working and he goes, man, that felt good. Right? Like that felt great. And I'm like, and here's the key. It feels great not because the yard is perfect or it's in a really great place. It feels good because what we had to do to get there.
Right. You did it.
That's what feels good. Looking at the yard doesn't make you like someone else could have done the yard and would have gotten in the backyard and you're like, eh. Right. But the fact that you did it, that's why that feels good.
Yeah. The yard is just a representation of the work that you did. It's the same thing I was talking about earlier when I see the things behind me. Dude, that I could buy that at the store. Like I could find a merchandise company and I could say, hey, I just want this like green band with this metal thing on the end of it. And, you know, I could pay $20 or whatever and have that.
Yeah. And that would have been
all of you guys might be impressed, right? You might be, ooh, look at that. Ooh, that's cool. But I would know that I didn't do anything to earn that, right? It's not about the medal. It's a representation of the effort and the work and the progress and the growth and the pride. And it's okay to have that, by the way. Same thing with this. People say, oh, trophy hunter. If you want to call it a trophy or whatever and be upset about it, it's a representation of the work that I did, something that I wasn't previously capable of, and now I'm capable of it, and there it is. There's a manifestation of it. It's just a representation of the work and the effort that went behind it, which is okay, by the way. You should celebrate those things.
Yeah. Justin King, I'm struggling to clarify my vision. I'm actually amazed at how little understanding I have of what I truly want. I want more income, but how? A family, but do I want to lead them, etc.? What are some strategies and tips to help me clarify my vision in order to take meaningful action towards it?
Well, you're more talking about objectives and tactics, right? I want to make more money is not vision. Yeah. It's an objective. And by the way, with all due respect, it's a weak objective because what does that mean? So does that mean if you earned $1 more this year than last year that you'd be happy? Of course you wouldn't, right? How much more money do you want to make?
And what is the experience that you're hoping to have because you have the money?
That's the vision, right? What will the money create? So there's nothing wrong with wanting to make more money. That's fine. It's just not a vision. But if you said, because I want to travel the world and I want to experience different cultures and I want to like gain this perspective that I've never considered before, and I want to be a well-rounded man who's introduced to lots of cultures and thoughts and ideas. Now we're getting into the vision component of it as opposed to the objective. The objective is just what makes the vision a reality.
Yeah.
Like I want to be, for example, like I want to be a committed, engaged, loving father who's deeply connected with his children, whose children are deeply bonded with him, who is extremely influential in the lives of his kids. And when they think about all of the difficulties and challenges and things that they'll face throughout their life, they'll remember and ask themselves, what would dad do in this situation? And I want to be able to take pride in that. So that's my vision, which means that this year I have to coach my son's baseball team. That's the objective, right? If I coach my son's baseball team, that will drive me closer to being connected and being bonded and all of those other visions that I have about the relationship between me and my children. And then the tactic is we practice every day for 30 minutes or for an hour every single day. We go take batting practice, we play catch, all the things. That's the tactic, which leads to the objective, which then drives the mission forward, or the vision forward.
And I think for Justin, I think you might be struggling with getting clear objective because you don't have a clear vision. When you get the clear vision, the objective is like, okay, well, now what do I need to do to be able to accomplish that? And that starts getting a lot easier.
Right. So. Yeah, I would say journaling is a very good practice to help. Some people will say, well, what do you journal? Anything and everything. When I journal, I write down, and I have two journals. I have like a personal journal and a business journal. And I write both from the perspective of, speaking of younger self, that my younger self would want to read this and be better for it. And not only my younger self, but my children. Yeah. So in 20 years, my kids will look at it and say, whoa, that's a lesson that dad learned, and here's how he learned it. How can I apply that? Right? That's what I do. That helps me. The other resource I want to give you is if you go to our website, orderofman.com, and sign up for the emails on the bottom of the page or wherever it is, then in 2 weeks, you'll get an alert that we have a course. It's a free course. It's an email course, and it's called 30 Days to Battle Readiness. And this will actually, for a week of the 30 days, It is hyper focused on getting your vision lined out. It's the very first week in that process. So that should be available in a couple weeks. If you go to the website, sign up for the emails, you'll get it when it comes out.
Guaranteed to increase your body fat by 5%, your bench by 20%, and your testosterone levels will just, you'll be like a 21-year-old.
Why wouldn't anybody do that? It's a no-brainer. You said increase body fat percentage, though.
Oh, did I? Well,
yes, decrease.
I'm talking to the skinny guys. Yeah.
I have a way to, I can guarantee, I've got a perfect strategy for guaranteeing increasing 5% body fat.
Yeah. It's salsa and chips.
Foolproof. Chips and salsa, all of them. Every night, all of them.
Yeah. How much chips and salsa do you eat? All of them. About it.
Yeah. All of them.
That's the
Chuck Norris. Man. How many push-ups can you do? All of them. How much can you deadlift? All of it.
Yeah, all of it. Yeah.
Right on. Let's wrap things up for today, man.
Okay. Yeah. So to join us on Facebook Live in the future, you can join us on that private group, facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And of course, learn more about the Iron Council, our exclusive brotherhood at orderofman.com/Iron Council. And like Ryan already mentioned, just as a quick reminder, sign up for our newsletter, orderofman.com, and you'll get updated on a great many things, but including these battle readiness that should be coming out pretty soon. Support the movement, share the message, subscribe to the podcast, hop on YouTube, find us there. And of course, you can follow Mr. Mickler on Instagram and Twitter at Ryan Mickler, and get your swag at store.orderofman.com.
That's right. All right, guys. Appreciate you. Great questions today. We'll continue to answer them as you continue to ask them, and hopefully we'll get a few things right here. But really appreciate you being on the path. Guys, if you would, I was just looking through the iTunes ratings and charts and all that stuff. And, it's important, not because, like, you can say you're number one, but because when you reach those levels, you reach more men that can be impacted by what we're doing. That's what's important, Kip, to you and me. I think I can speak for you when I say that. So we need your help. And the only way we can do that is through word of mouth, is for you leaving rating and reviews, is for you to post on Instagram an episode that you listened to, that you enjoyed, or a question that was answered that really resonated with you. It doesn't take very long. And it's the only way. Like, we don't do a bunch of sponsored posts. Like, you're never going to get a bunch of like ads. I listened to a podcast this morning, legit 11 minutes before they actually got to the meat of the podcast.
Really? Holy cow.
Like introduction. I think they had 3 or 4 different sponsors. It was 11 minutes before they got to the meat. So we get to the meat quicker. And if we don't, it's because we're telling stories, not because we're hawking products. Okay. So help us. Like, we're trying to put this information out to you. Help us reach more men who need this, and more families and communities, the people that are going to be impacted by the men who are going to go out and lead. And you do that by rating and review, sharing, promoting, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we ask of you. All right.
And I think it's a form of banding with us, right? Like, that's how you band with this group of men, like-minded men, and rub shoulders with us, is by participating. And that's a form of participation.
Definitely. All right, guys, we'll be back on, I think we have tomorrow, actually, another podcast being released, because I've done so many over the past several weeks that we're going to ramp up a little bit, at least temporarily, probably not permanently, but we're going to ramp up.
Another interview show tomorrow.
Cool. The Friday field notes, we've got it all available for you guys. So stay tuned. All right. And share. Appreciate you guys. And until tomorrow, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.